اختار ممنوع أن يبحث في المعرفة فزار أحد أهم مراكز البحث العالمي. ارتحل فريق ممنوع إلى الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وزرنا هذه الجامعة المعروفة بأسماء أنتجت للمعرفة والعلم والفكر البشري أعظم وأكبر الأسماء. في ممنوع هذا المساء سنلتقي كل من المفكرين الدكتور والبروفسير موريس هالي وكذلك رفيق دربه في علم اللغات والألسنيات والمفكر السياسي الشهير البروفسير الدكتور نعوم Chomsky. في ممنوع اخترنا أن نبحث عن تطور الأفكار واللغات. كيف يمكن للإنسان أن يتحدث لغة أو أكثر؟ اللغة إذن هي مجموعة محدودة من الحروف تعطينا كلمات لا محدودة. سنبحث في المحدود واللا محدود، سنبحث عن الأصوات التي تتحول إلى كلمات وإلى مفاهيم متشعبة من البسيط إلى المعقد. في اللغة أيضا والأطفال، العقل البشري هو رحلة مثيرة للبحث، للعشق، مثيرة للجدل عن الصانع الخالق. قادنا ذلك الموضوع إلى البحث عن الإلحاد أو الإيمان. هل الإيمان والإلحاد متضادان في مجال الدين؟ هل الدين فقط هو من يحتكر لعبة الإيمان؟ أو هناك أبعاد أخرى بين الإلحاد والإيمان؟ هي رحلة في أكثر من كتاب. نعوم Chomsky وموريس هالي، مكتبة تتكلم في ممنوع هذا المساء.
The task that I was assigned by Sabine Yatridou and that I'm now executing is to introduce the speaker of the evening. Since Noam Chomsky has been a figure of great importance in linguistics for the last half century, there's nobody here who hasn't read his work. There's nobody here who hasn't been deeply influenced by it. It is a great honor and a great pleasure to introduce my old department colleague and friend, Noam Chomsky, who will now speak.
You've all been through a long, hard day, and I thought that instead of another technical talk on current work, it might be more useful just to can't mix levels. If you're doing serious procedural analysis, you get the smallest units first, and then classify them into bigger units, and then get a sequence of these, and go to the next level, and so on. But to explain things like writer-rider, you have to take account of the pretty obvious fact that one of them's derived from right, the other from ride, and the phonemic difference is obvious, but that's illegitimate. You can't look at that for principled reasons. And there were people like, say, Bernard Bloch, who actually was very helpful to us, I should say, in the early days, and me in particular. He was very honest about it. He never fudged. He was consistent. So, for example, he was a very important phonologist. His, for example, it takes, say, words like cot and cod, cot that you lie on, codfish. For him, they had two phonemic differences. The consonants were different and the vowels were different. They contrasted. And the reason they contrasted is because there's one pair in English in which they contrast.
The 1950s, Noam visited Morris in Maine. Morris Haddon still has a house there. And they went for a walk, and Morris's wife, Roz, took a picture of the two of them. And in 1988, which was quite a few years ago, I was in my second year then, we had a party for Noam's 60th birthday in the department. And at that party, Morris presented Noam with a huge enlargement of that picture that had been taken more than 30 years before that. Now, I had said I was in my second year then, and I took a picture of them holding that picture. And the enlargement of that picture is this. I don't know why you're applauding, but all right. Okay, so if you're like me and you're looking for a good photo op, get out your cameras and your phones, because Noam and Morris have agreed to pose for the third recursion of this picture. So if you come here.
If you bother looking at the picture, you'll get a little bit of social history. Sabine didn't mention, but the first picture in 1955 was on a Sunday afternoon. Morris was up at his summer place, and I went to visit them on a Sunday afternoon. I don't know if you can see, but we're both wearing jackets and ties this Sunday afternoon at the beach. That was the mid-1950s.
We're honored to have you part of this show. Atheism, it's a big topic now in the Arab world.
Atheism is a question, begins with the question of, are there phenomena in the world that we cannot explain by statements about material objects, such as such as what happens to the air in this room, how much pressure we put on the air, and so on. Now, an atheist says that, and I would say that I am one, that science explains all the phenomena that we know. And the phenomena that science cannot explain are either mistakes in our reasoning, that is, we have not properly analyzed the situation, or they're simply, they have no status you can, as people say, a fool can ask more questions than 20 wise men can answer. These are the kind of questions for which either it's a mistake to ask that kind of question, because sometimes when you ask, like for example, you were to ask, how you cannot ask a question like how many atoms are in this room. Well, because, in order to count the atoms in this room, you have to isolate this room from the rest of the world. And the computation of that number is is of such complexity that it's just beyond anything.
Did you experience discussing these issues with Chomsky?
No, we never discussed that. It was obvious to both of us that there couldn't possibly be any serious.
Does he share the same beliefs with you when it comes to atheism?
I would imagine, though I haven't never discussed it with him. So I don't. There are many people who believe that there's a power known that people call God, that created everything. Well, that's, in order to believe that, you'd have to say that you cannot explain you cannot explain this more without that proposition. But
there is also scientists who they believe in God.
Some scientists do.
And some scientists don't.
And those who believe in God, they believe in things which I define not unnecessary to posit in order to explain it, the things that explain why I find things that are not, how I explain everything in the world.
Do you believe that moral values,
yes,
can be existing in a society without believing in God?
Yes.
But
And
what is the source
for
of...
example, I believe that we have a responsibility to each of us. I mean, you have a responsibility towards me, and I have a responsibility towards you, and it's because of that responsibility that I don't take out a knife and cut you, and you don't take out a knife and cut me, and we have a reasonable human conversation, as we are having right now, and that type of behavior, is presupposed in my theory of what is proper interaction between human beings. You want to know about the Crusades? Well, I mean, as I know it, and I'm not an expert on the history of what happened in the 12th or 13th, in 1200 or 1300 or 1100, but because of preaching in the churches, many of the European proletariat decided that they would, and they organized this. It was organized in France and Germany. They organized invasions of the Arab countries that were in the East, where they knew that Jesus Christ had lived approximately when he's supposed to have lived, Yeah. I mean, I don't know what it is in the Arabic year count, but whatever the historians teach you, I believe that's probably the correct year, And so the Crusades, people became very enthusiastic about going to Palestine and removing conquering these places where their God had lived, Jesus. I mean, who in my mind was not a God, but he was a person, and he was a preacher of some sort. And we know, we know some of what he preached because people wrote them down. Okay.
How do you see the person of Jesus and his teaching?
I see it, I don't know. I mean, this would be like saying, how would I don't know much about you. But whatever I know about you, that would tell me.
How much do you know about Jesus?
Not very much. Because I'm not a believer in Jesus. I mean, it's not part of my religion, and in fact, I have no religion. So I do not believe in Jesus being a holy person or anything like that. I mean, he was just a person who lived whenever I don't know what year it is in the Mohammedan calendar, but it's something like 500 before the calendar starts, or 600.
Yeah, 600 before, yep.
Maybe before, I mean,
How do you see Islam?
Islam is just another religion, and I don't happen to believe either in Islam or in Christianity or in fact the belief of the religion of the Jews. I don't.
How do you explain that in the Far East they don't have religions? They have system of ideas, like we can call it kind of philosophy, like Buddhism and Hinduism.
Then that's the way I think of it. I mean, I would think Buddhism is a way of thinking about the world. And, I don't think that's necessarily that Buddhism is true or false, but I realize that many people in the Far East believe that the tenets of Buddhism are correct, but I don't know much about them myself.
At the end of this conversation, I'm gonna let you say whatever you want to say about Chomsky. What can you say as a final word about the man?
Oh, well, I mean, in my opinion, he is a very, very profound thinker. And I found many of his ideas about, he and I, we discuss mainly technical issues about language. Now, to give you an instance of what a technical issue about language is, for example, when you say, you take the past tense of English, okay? Now, the past tense in English, I mean, it's a very precise thing. You know, I write, but I wrote yesterday. And you can't say I write yesterday. That would be incorrect in English. You know, I mean, it's not a crime, you understand? It's not, the police will not come and arrest you. But if you speak English, it's more like knowing how to dance. Now, when you go on the dance floor, I mean, either you know how to dance this dance or you don't know how to dance. And the appropriate people who know how to dance will tell you how to dance this dance correctly, and they can say right away, Hallie never learned how to dance, so he obviously is very, I mean, when we look at him, we can see that he's completely useless as a dancer, okay? That's also the same thing about language. I mean, you know that in English, when the past tense of write is wrote.
Wrote.
But the past tense of bite is not boat.
No.
You know, we have to, it's bit, you know. So there are certain facts that you learn when you're very little. And among them are facts like that I know how to make the past tense. So I know decide, the past tense is decided, and divide is divided. And knowing how to speak English is knowing, A, that there are different, and which words require one past tense and which words require the other past tense. So divide requires divided, but write does not, you can't say righted. You have to say wrote, you know, and you can't say decide, disowed. That would be wrong. I mean, but that's what children learn that very quickly, and they don't ever make mistakes. You never correct. You know, maybe when they're very young, they make mistakes about certain words, but on the whole, you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
سألت نعوم تشومسكي في حوار منذ أيام قليلة.
نعم.
فقال كيف يراهن المثقفون العرب في مصر، متحدثا إلى أصدقائه مثل نوال السعداوي.
نعم.
التي تناصر السيسي. كيف يراهنون على الجيش؟ قلت له أن للمنطقة للبلد أوضاع مختلفة، لكنه يرى عكس ما ترى. فماذا تقول لهؤلاء المثقفين في الغرب؟
أولا الجيش في مصر مؤسسة وطنية. الجيش في مصر عاد مع عودة الدولة الوطنية. يعني عندما أجد إنه السيسي وقف إلى جانب الجماهير التي خرجت لتسقط دولة الإخوان الفاشية، لابد أن أراهن عليه، لأنه هو نفسه أصبح يراهن على هذه الثورة، مرتبط بها، وهو جاء عن طريقها. يعني الجماهير التي أسقطت مرسي وسواه من هؤلاء الذين حكموا مصر في تلك الفترة، هذه الجماهير التي أسقطت هؤلاء هي التي رفعت السيسي إلى سدة الرئاسة، وبالتالي السيسي مدين لهذه الجماهير ومدين لثورة 30 يونيو. ولذلك أرى الآن أن السيسي هو صاحب الصوت الأعلى في المطالبة بتجديد الخطاب الديني، وهو صاحب الصوت الأعلى في المطالبة بالثورة الدينية. هذا يجعلني أتفائل بطبيعة الأحوال. وتشومسكي الذي يعني يشعر بالقلق إذا ما يحدث في مصر، لأن الجيش له دور مهم في الحياة السياسية. أقول للسيد تشومسكي اطمئن، أنا أستطيع أن أفهم قلقك لكني لست معك. لماذا؟ لأن تاريخنا يختلف عن تاريخكم، ونحن نراهن على المستقبل وسوف ندافع عن الديمقراطية، وأنا أظن أن السيسي سوف يكون معنا.
طبيعي ان نعوم شومسكي بيقول بالشكل ده، هو امريكي وشايف ان وجهة نظره كده، لكن بالنسبة لنا احنا كمصريين ثورة 30 او 30 يونيو هو الموجة الثانية ل 25 يناير، وهي اللي صححت الثورة. فعلينا ان احنا نفهم ان التاريخ وجهات نظر، وانت بتشوف الحدث وبتكتبه في الحقيقة من وجهة نظرك انت، فما بيزعجنيش قوي ان حد يقول كده.
أنا برد عليه بقول له إن لا، ثورة 30 يونيو هي حتى مش ثورة 30 يونيو، هي استكمال ل 25 يناير. احنا بنقول وطبقا للدستور المصري ثورة 25/30، لأن الثورة حلقات، ف30 يونيو مكملة ل 25 يناير، بل هي أساسا جزء منها، وأعتقد إنها مش مؤامرة على الإطلاق. واللي بيقول كده مش فاهم أي حاجة بالنسبة لتاريخ مصر المعاصر، لأن ثورة 30 يونيو هي مكملة لثورة 25 يناير، بل هما الاثنين ثورة واحدة طبقا للدستور المصري ثورة 25/30.
الاتهام الموجه إلى ثورة 30 يونيو هو اتهام كثير من الكتاب يوجهونه لثورات أخرى، يعني ثورة 23 يونيو إلى الآن نجد من يثير أنها انقلاب، ولكن أنت تستخدم أكاديميا المصطلح. ما المقصود بكلمة ثورة؟ الثورة تعني تغيير جذري لأوضاع من المجتمع من المجتمعات. إذن أنت أمام تغيير يجري الآن على قدم وساق لمصر. إذا ما تحقق هذا التغيير ونجح هذا التغيير، ونحن نرى بشائر هذا التغيير، فنحن أمام ثورة بلا شك.
نعوم تشومسكي تقدر تحسبه على الوجوه المعارضة في الداخل الأمريكي. موقفه من السياسات الأمريكية وفكرة الليبرالية وفكرة السياسات الأمريكية تحديدا في العالم ومحاولة فرض الهيمنة موقف جيد جدا وبيحاول يفككها. طبعا انت يعني احنا مش هنقدر نقف على كل أعماله وناخد منها عليها حكم دقيق جدا، لكن هو له موقف جيد جدا من القضية الفلسطينية، له موقف جيد جدا من الصراع العربي الصهيوني، وله مواقف كتيرة ومناظرات كتيرة في محاولة تفكيك فكرة العولمة وفرض الهيمنة الأمريكية على العالم.
Did you take any classes with Mr. Chomsky?
No, he hasn't taught in years. So, but he had a seminar once that he does every couple of years, like talking about his sort of new breakthroughs on linguistics, and I went to that. So,
If I ask you about like what's unique, one thing unique about Chomsky, just one.
probably his ability to retain information. I don't know if that's unique enough, but just he is sort of a walking encyclopedia kind of a person where he can bring up anything, and then he like got everything indexed and saying, you know, this is when this happened, this is when that happened, etc. Yeah.
أنا يعني شايف إن هو أحد وجوه المفكرين اللي بيحاولوا يخالفوا الركب السائد في النظام الغربي. النظام الغربي يعني قليل اللي تلاقي فيه عكس الشائع، يعني قليل اللي تلاقي فيه فكرة ان في مفكر ينفصل عن القطيع ويحاول يقدم وجهة نظر مغايرة، ده قليل قوي. فنعوم تشومسكي أحد هذه الوجوه التي بشكل نسبي تحاول أن تقدم وجهة نظر مغايرة للموقف الرسمي الغربي والأمريكي تحديدا.
Dr. and Professor Chomsky, it's an honor for our show Forbidden, ممنوع, to have you as our guest.
Pleasure to be with you.
I know your father was one of the major like Hebrew scholars. He wrote books and to put life in the Hebrew language. How did that affect you as a kid growing in this environment?
In many ways. First of all, just intellectually, when I was, I don't know, maybe 12 years old or so, I read his doctoral dissertation, which was a scholarly edition, first scholarly edition of a famous medieval Hebrew grammarian, David Kimchi, who essentially borrowed from the very rich tradition of Arabic grammar at the time, which I later studied, and adapted it to a grammar of Hebrew, and this was a scholarly edition which went into the history of the Semitic history and so on and so forth, and of course learned from that. My parents were, first of all, they lived in a kind of a Hebrew ghetto, not a physical ghetto, but a cultural one.
Mm-hmm.
This was a period in which there was an effort to revive Hebrew as a living language. It had been in the 19th century, it was revived as a literary language. Before that, it was not a language that anybody spoke.
No.
Practically nobody. But by the 1930s, within the Jewish community, there were a number of splits, and many people just didn't care. But among those who were involved, there was a split between Yiddishists and supporters of the revival of Hebrew. It was pretty Kulturkampf, real,
Was your dad...
he was on the Hebrew side.
Yep.
My
And he
mother-
forbid you to speak Yiddish or use...
That was their native, my parents,
Yeah.
for them, their native language was Yiddish.
Yiddish, but they didn't use
I never
it.
heard a word, except secret language of parents.
Code.
Yeah, but we were not supposed to read.
And you learned Hebrew
We learned Hebrew from an early age, and of course I went
أنت دبير عفريت اليوم أنت do you speak it today?
But and from also about 10 or 11 years old, I spend Friday evening. I would always read Hebrew with my father. Hebrew literature, essayists like a Chadam, and this goes into the other phase of it, the commitment to some form of Zionism. And Zionism then didn't mean what it means now. So I became a Zionist youth leader, but in groups that were opposed to a Jewish state.
A Zionist who opposed to the Jewish state.
Which was
lots of my views on the Arab
which
world,
was
they don't
not
know
a
this
contradiction
concept.
at the time.
Yep.
A large part of the so-called Zionist movement was actually formally opposed to a Jewish state. The tendencies that I was involved in, I was also by then involved in all kinds of radical politics, were committed to trying to, this is pre-1948, to develop a...
Yeah, we're gonna have a little break and we'll come back to the discussion. كنا هناك مع عماد دبور. عماد دبور منتج ومقدم برامج على سات 7. هذا عماد دبور في ممنوع. هذا فريق ممنوع
مع عماد دبور.
عماد دبور
مع الإعلامي
عماد دبور.
Forbidden with عماد دبور.
أنا عماد دبور. أنا سات 7 في ممنوع. في مجال اللغة وتعلم الأطفال لهذه التقنيات من نحو وصرف من تكلم. اتفق العلماء على تسميتها اللغة الأم مهما كانت تلك اللغة. هي لغة لا يتعلمها الأطفال في المدارس. أولاً يتعلمها الطفل في حضن أمه عندما يكبر كل يوم وهو بالقرب من دندنات أصوات أمه عندما ترضعه أو تقوم بكل ما يحتاجه ذلك الطفل. في الأشهر والأيام الأولى قبل أن يبلغ سن السنة الثانية يكون الطفل قد تعلم قواعد اللغة. كيف لعقل بشري ما زال في مراحل النمو الأولى أن يحفظ كل تلك التفاصيل؟ نعوم تشومسكي يفسر لنا حيث يقول:
Immediately, as soon as you can do experiments. There was, of course, set off a raft of experimentation, and by now it's been shown, of course, it's not any two languages, depends on the properties, and it seems to fall into patterns of similar prosody. So it seems that infants are just tuned to picking out prosodic elements. There is work, I think, mainly by, some of you know a lot more about this than I do, so correct me, but the most that I know is by Laura Ann Petito, finding special structures in the brain, which apparently she claims are humanly specific, that pick out certain kinds of rhythm roughly at the size of a syllable. So maybe kids are picking out something like syllables. And then it's again, by say 6 months or so, I think kids pretty much have mastered the prosodic structure of their language. So something's going on very fast, obviously pre-tuned. But it's more than just prosody and periodicity, it's of a specific kind. It's of a kind that's looking in specific ways and is using that information to construct everything we know. And in fact, what I said about telegraphic speech is quite relevant here, I think. The better experimentation has become, the more it's been learned that the younger and younger you get, the more that kids know. And there is evidence by now that by roughly maybe 18, 20 months, the kids probably know almost the whole language. One kind of evidence for this is the Helen Keller type case. Helen Keller was extremely fluent, wonderful fluency. She was blind deaf, but I think she became blind deaf at 20 months. She invented for herself, it turns out, Lila Gleitman pointed this out to me recently with some old videotapes that surfaced. She had worked out the system that's now called Dodoma, which is used to teach blind deaf. It's a system where you put your hand on the cheek and your thumb on the vocal cords, and she somehow figured that out. And her almost remarkable fluency in English came from something like Dodoma, but from 20 months. Now, since then, there's been experimentation, some of it here. My wife did a lot of the main work on this, that studied other cases experimentally, and they never published this because there weren't enough cases. But what was coming out was that they could get very successful results with Dodoma if the person lost sight and hearing roughly at that age. But if it was before about 16 months, they never had any success. Well, if that holds up, fortunately you can't study it anymore because this was spinal meningitis. Now it's curable. But if some result like that turned out to be right, it would imply that roughly at that age, the kids must know an awful lot about the language, and that Dodoma is just kind of eliciting something that's inside, sort of like the telegraphic speech.
You spoke about Elijah. What's the historic Jesus for you? How do you see it?
He's a creation of a combination of history, mythology, the history of what Jesus stands for is quite intriguing. The first few centuries of of Christianity, Christians were a bitterly, harshly persecuted group. The reason is implicit in the lesson of the Gospels. The Gospels are radical pacifist. And of course, any radical pacifist movement is going to be harshly repressed by power. In the 4th century, 315, the Roman Empire, Constantine, took over Christianity, turned it into the official religion of the Roman Empire. The cross, which had been the symbol of the suffering, was on the shield of the Roman legions. And from that point on, Christianity became shifted from the religion of the persecuted to the religion of the persecutors. That pretty much went on until 1962, when...
How do you see the Crusades?
Crusades were a vicious attack by Western Christians, who were some of the most brutal people of the period, against the Middle East. But notice that it was not just the Crusades. When the Christians conquered Spain in 1492, they destroyed the most advanced civilization in the world, the most tolerant civilization. They threw out the Jews, they repressed the Muslims, and they created a barbarous regime. The Crusades and there were crusades against heretical Christians too, very harsh and brutal. But the history is pretty ugly. What happened in recent years is very instructive. In 1962, Pope John XXIII called Vatican II, which was a dramatic event in the history of the Church. He called for a revival of the Gospels, a return of Christianity to its origins. That was taken very seriously, especially in Latin America, and it led to a war against the Church. The United States fought a war against the Church with many religious martyrs. It ended in 1989 with the murder of 6 leading Jesuit intellectuals by a military unit armed and supported by the United States. They were murdered in the university. The Archbishop had been murdered while reading Mass, a long series of events. It's out of history because we don't talk about our own crimes. We only talk about other crimes. But it's all part of the history of Christianity. The Gospels are a subversive literature, very dangerous because of what they say.
يعتقد أن مقولات تشومسكي تعد الأكثر انتشاراً في العالم والأكثر اقتباساً، حيث يحتل أحد أهم المراتب العالمية في الكلمات والمقولات الأكثر اقتباساً في الأبحاث العلمية والأكاديمية. نعوم تشومسكي يقول في هذا المجال التالي:
Can't do it for physics. If you can't do it for physics, you can't do it for linguistics. That's kind of a theorem, you know. There's no measure of when a theory fails. So like
not so much when it fails, but why it fails.
What?
Why it fails.
Yeah, well, I mean, take contemporary physical theory, what you learn if you take a physics course at MIT. You learn modern physics, which has a slight problem. It can't find 90% of the mass energy in the universe. Well, kind of minor problem. In fact, the CERN accelerator, is now trying to find the famous Higgs bosons, which, if they exist, will maybe overcome this problem. Well, that's the state of science. Most things it doesn't understand. You have theories which, it's a terrific theory, works better than anything in history, but it has defects like this. Also, it doesn't know how many universes there are. Are there one or an infinite number? That's a live question. But you can't, and it's an open question. And there's just no way of measuring the extent to which a theory succeeds in answering the questions that it poses. Because they all, if you take a look at data, they all fail wildly. That's why scientists do experiments. You do experiments to try. Experiment creates an idealization, a highly idealized system in which you try to get an answer to something, but you don't try to get an answer to what's going on in the world. That's way too complex, far too many variables, and so on. In fact, this is part of where the Galilean revolution kind of took off. Galileo was doing experiments. Most of them were thought experiments. He didn't actually do them, just kind of thought about them. And a lot of them are physically impossible, it's now known. But he tried to convince the NSF of his day, the aristocrats, that the results that he was getting meant something. And if you look back at the discussions, they couldn't see the point of what he was doing. I mean, why worry about a ball rolling down a frictionless plane, which can't even exist, instead of, say, worrying about how a flower grows? To try to get over that gap was no small task. And in fact, Galileo faced plenty of problems, like he was never able to explain why objects don't fly off the Earth. And if the Earth is rotating, why don't we all fly off it? Small problem. That people didn't give up science at that point. They kind of went on. So yeah, you expect theories to fail, and it's interesting to learn where they fail. And yes, you try, just like you said, you look at the failures and try to see if you can overcome them, often by just trying to find real data, not the data of sense, which is way too complex to look at, but the kind of data which will be designed to give you the right answer.
الإلحاد اللي هو ما بيؤمنش بربنا أو عنده مبادئ تانية غير الأفكار الدينية أيا كانت ديانته، يعني ما بيؤمنش بفكر الدين عموما إن في ربنا أو في رسالة منزلة من السماء أو كده.
أنا أساسا عايز أعرف موضوع ملحد يعني إيه، وبعدين أرد على سيادتك.
الإلحاد يعني كفر؟
لا، ده سيبه لربنا بقى، هو اللي هيتصرف معاه، وبعدين هو ماشي النهارده بصحته شويه كده واتفرج عليه بقى وقاعد على الكنبه، ولا عارف يقوم يشرب ولا عارف يقوم من الحمام، وبعد كده يقول يا رب. انت نسيت يا رب وانت بصحتك وعافيتك جاي تطلبه وانت خلاص قعدت على الكنبه؟
الملحد هو الذي لا يؤمن بأي دين سماوي ولا حتى بأي دين آخر زي البوذية، ولا البوذية مش إلحاد، لا يؤمن بأي شيء، ولكنه يؤمن، خدت بال حضرتك، بالفلسفة الألمانية. الفلسفة الألمانية دي هي اللي ابتدعت الإلحاد، حيث أن نيتشه الفيلسوف الألماني الكبير هو الذي قال، بس ما يزعلوش مني اللي حواليا، إن الله قد مات.
الإلحاد اللي هو ما بيأمنش بربنا، لكن هو عنده اعتقاد معين في دماغه هو بيؤمن بيه، لكن ما بيؤمنش بربنا.
الإلحاد اللي هو الناس ما بتؤمنش بالله سبحانه وتعالى، وبتتكلم بقى في بعض ناس عامله مواقع بتتكلم تقول لك من هو في اله اسمه انكي والديانه السومريه، وبتتكلم على ان ما فيش اله، وبيعملوا حاجات عشان الناس تخرج من حاجه اسمها انك تصلي وتطيع ربنا سبحانه وتعالى. بيتكلموا بفكر رهيب، انت لو دخلت وقريت من ده يكاد الانسان ما عندوش ايمان يمشي ورا الكلام ده بقى بعقل، واخد بصوره غير عاديه.
الإلحاد اللي هو راجل ما بيعرفش ربنا، ده اللي بمفهومي أنا الإلحاد.
واحد ملحد يعني بفكره إنه هو مثلا يبقى متطرف أو كده.
يمثل الإلحاد ونكران وجود الله أحد المواضيع القديمة الجديدة، إيمان أو عدم إيمان، صراع الدين مع اللادين. يريد له البعض أن يكون صراع الدين مع العقل، أو هكذا يوصف. الإلحاد هو ليس فقط رفض للدين ورفض للخالق، بل هو فكر ونظرة يجد لها البعض جذورا وتبريرا في الفلسفة والعلم والتاريخ وأحداث التاريخ. فنجد أن الكثير من الحروب والمآسي كان سببها متدينون من كل الأديان وفي كل العصور، متدينون أساءوا بتدينهم إلى من اختلف معهم في الإيمان، في العقيدة أو في التطبيق. الإلحاد هو محاولة لإيجاد تفسير منطقي وعقلي مادي للوجود والكون والماضي والآتي والمرض والموت. الإلحاد هو فلسفة وفكر يقبلها البعض، يتعايش معها بعض آخر يرفضها البعض الآخر. يقول البعض أنه هو أيضا، أي الإلحاد، يحتاج إلى إيمان من نوع آخر. وضيفي هذا المساء موريس هالي ونعوم تشومسكي هما أحد أعلام هذه الفلسفة وهذا الفكر الإلحادي. فضيفي هما بمستوى الممنوع بكل المقاييس، موريس هالي ونعوم تشومسكي في ممنوع من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. Dear Professor, because matter of time, your name was mentioned in a late movie about you're the greatest atheist. And another question related to that, how come an atheist have such morality defending the poor, and is it your background fed your moral life? Let's talk about atheism first. What's your concept about? You're a man of concepts.
If somebody asks me whether I'm an atheist, I can't answer. I'm being asked, do you believe in something? But they don't tell me what the something is. So therefore,
can you tell us about the something?
I don't know what it is. I mean, people have their own varying conceptions of it. Whatever their conceptions are, I see no reason to believe in them. But if they want to believe in them, fine, that's their business. People, as long as it doesn't interfere with others, people can have whatever beliefs they are. I can comprehend why people would want to believe in some kind of a force in the world for good, a benign force somewhere. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I can understand why people would like to believe that there is such a force. I don't see any reason to believe in it. I don't see any, but it's their business, not mine. I think that has almost nothing to do with concern for poor and suffering people. There are religious people who have those concerns. There are religious people who don't care and are brutal and harsh. And the same is true of non-religious people. It's independent.
معنى ان حد صديقي مثلا فجأة يقول ان مفيش ربنا وفجأة يقول ان مفيش رسالات، ولا دي مسألة هتخليني اقف جنبه على الاقل انصحه، لكن اسيبه مثلا اتخلى عنه لا، هنصحه على الاقل.
تعامل مع الناس على انه مواطن له حقوق في الانسانية، ان انا اتعامل معاه بيها، ما يهمنيش هو ديانته ايه.
لا ابعد عنه، ابعد عنه، انا هو في طريقه وانا في طريقي.
لا واحد ما بيعرفش ربنا اعرفه انا ليه.
بكمل معاه بس هو ليهم ديني ولا ليا ديني؟
والله بدل مش هيضرني هو حر. لا طبعا ملحد لا ما يشرفنيش ان انا اعرف.
لا اسيبه طبعا. ما يعرفش ربنا اسيبه. لا طبعا اقطع علاقتي بيه طبعا.
الحرية ما فيش أثمن منها في الدنيا. هو يحترم عقيدتي وانا احترم عقيدته.
Mr. Chomsky, if we go back to the Tunisia situation, what's your message for the Tunisian people? And I'm a Tunisian, and I would love to end this show talking to my people.
Well, I don't. It would be totally inappropriate for me to offer advice. I can only say that their struggle has been an inspiration, and I wish it the greatest success.
Again, Forbidden Show and myself, I wish you a very happy early birthday in December.
Thank you very much.
حوار ممتع تعلمنا منه الكثير. نتفق أو نختلف تلك مسألة أخرى. في ممنوع نحب أن يكون لضيوفنا أفكار بألوان الطيف تتنوع لكنها تتعايش مع بعضها البعض. ممنوع. هذا عماد دبور يحييكم على أمل اللقاء بكم في لقاءات أخرى من ممنوع.